Welcome to Business Review, a daily program that delves into the latest and most significant economic stories. From stock markets to currency news, Business Review covers the most up-to-date developments in the global financial world.
Spain's Prime Minister Pedro Sanchez said that his country must focus on its economic recovery after registering an unprecedented collapse in second quarter GDP. Ahead of a meeting with regional leaders, he said that reducing inequality between Spain's regions must be a part of any eventual recovery, adding that the worst moment of the crisis had now passed. The coronavirus crisis has pulverized Spain's economy, triggering its worst recession since the Civil War, with a depressed state of tourism boding ill for any hopes of a swift rebound. Hit by one of Europe's worst pandemic outbreaks, followed by one of its strictest lockdowns, the Spanish economy came to a halt in March and stayed largely paralyzed until the end of June. Figures from the National Statistics Institute showed the economy shrank a historic 18.5% in the second quarter, a drop so harsh it wiped out all the recovery the southern European nation had managed to build up since the global financial crisis. The second quarter contraction came after a 5.2% drop in the first 3 months of the year, at that stage the worst quarter on record. Historians say only the 1936 through 1939 Civil War hit the economy harder.
The French finance minister Bruno Le Maire said that France will continue to fight to lessen the economic shrinkage it forecast for 2020 due to the pandemic, as a better-than-feared second quarter lost shines a ray of light. The French economy contracted by a post-war record of 13.8% in the second quarter, as consumption, investment and trade all collapsed under the lockdown. The contraction was not as severe, however, as the 17% predicted earlier this month by the National Statistics Office, INSEE, and the 15.3% reduction penciled in by analysts polled by Reuters. The contraction in the Eurozone's second largest economy was steeper than the 10.1% reported by Germany, where authorities kept a surge in COVID cases in check and did not have to enforce a lockdown as strict as France's. The French lockdown was stringently enforced until May the 11th, with non-essential shops shut, and gradually lifted over the course of the second quarter, with cafes and restaurants being allowed to open from the 2nd of June onwards. The mayor said the French economy should perform better than 11% contraction forecast for 2020. He said the measures such as state aid for companies and a decision not to raise taxes in order to encourage consumer spending could enable a pickup later this year. Asked about the state support for Air France, he said France will do anything necessary to maintain the airline and jobs it entails. The remarks came after Air France KLM reported a €1.55 billion quarterly operating loss on July the 30th, as the pandemic crippled global air travel after revenue plunged 83% to €1.182 billion in April and June.
Zimbabwe's businesses were shut and streets deserted in the capital Harare early as security forces increased patrols to stop anti-government protests called by activists over corruption and economic hardships. President Emmerson Mnangagwa, who is under pressure to revive a stricken economy, has said the protests constitute an insurrection by the opposition. In central Harare and nearby Mabere Township, a hotbed of past protests, businesses including banks and supermarkets were shut as police and soldiers patrolled the streets. Security forces increased checkpoints on roads leading into central Harare. A journalist in the second biggest city, Bulawayo, said businesses were also closed with few cars on the road. Scores were killed during a crackdown on the last major protests in January of 2019, and the government shut the internet. Zimbabwe's worst economic crisis in more than a decade is marked by inflation running above 700%. unemployment, acute shortages of foreign currency, and public hospitals crippled by strikes and lack of medicine. Critics say Mnangagwa is exploiting a COVID-19 lockdown to stifle dissent. Mnangagwa imposed an overnight curfew and restricted free movement last week to curb the novel coronavirus infections.
Nearly 2 years after the deadly collapse of a viaduct that killed 43 people, the new Genoa bridge is ready for inauguration. The new bridge, called Ponte San Giorgio, will replace the old Morandi bridge that collapsed on August the 14th of 2018, hurling cars and trucks to the ground and prompting national outrage, especially against the infrastructure group Alantania, which had operated it. Since January 2019, hundreds of workers in a new consortium comprising inspection and engineering services group RINA, builder We Build, formerly Salini Impreglio, and the shipbuilder Finasentieri have been working day and night to erect the new structure. Neither a flood last year nor the pandemic, which put Italy's economy on its knees, have stopped the project. Even before Rome imposed a nationwide lockdown and set heavy restrictions on movement to limit the spread of the virus, all workers provided with safety protections divided in teams and had their contacts traced to manage the risk of contagion. On June the 22nd, WeBuild's chief executive, Pietro Salini, drove a car across the entirety of the bridge for the first time since construction on the replacement of the collapsed bridge began late last year. On July the 19th, 16 trucks drove back and forth on the structure to test the twisting capacity. The San Giorgio Bridge is inaugurated by President Sergio Mattarella on August the 3rd.
South Korea's central bank said the economy of isolated North Korea grew for the first time in 3 years in 2019 as better weather conditions boosted crop yields. But sanctions imposed to stop its nuclear ambitions kept factory output weak. Gross domestic product, or GDP, in North Korea last year rose 0.4% in real terms from the previous year, when the economy suffered the biggest contraction in 21 years, shrinking 4.1% due to a drought and sanctions, according to the Bank of Korea. North Korea has been under UN sanctions since 2006 over its ballistic missile and nuclear programs, and the UN Security Council has been toughening measures in recent years. Current leader Kim Jong-un vowed to switch the focus from the development of nuclear arsenal to economic development in 2018 before he held an unprecedented summit with US President Donald Trump. The two leaders have met 3 times but failed to find a compromise over the North's nuclear weapons program.
China's Purchasing Managers Index, the PMI, for manufacturing sector have remained above 50% for 5 consecutive months since February this year, which shows the Chinese economy is in recovery. According to the National Bureau of Statistics, the manufacturing PMI rose to 51.1 in July from 50.9 in June. It is an indicator commonly adopted by international society to monitor the macroeconomic trends and supervise the macroeconomic situation. Of the 21 surveyed manufacturing industries, 17, 3 more than last month, saw a PMI above the cutoff point, showing the range of economic recovery has expanded. Shi Jiahui, Director of Enterprise Performance Department of the service industry, said that the prevention and control of COVID-19 and policies for economic and social development played strong roles in July. China's business conditions continued to improve, with productivity and operation of enterprises being improved. In addition, 20 manufacturing industries, excluding chemical, fiber, rubber, and plastic product manufacturing, saw a production index above the threshold in July. The production indexes in textile and clothing industry and wood processing industry topped the threshold for the first time after the outbreak of the pandemic. As enterprises step up procurement to meet their needs in production, the reading for procurement volume rebounded to 52.4% in July. That's up 0.6 points from June. The main raw materials purchase price index in July also reached a new high of 58.1%. Production and business activities expectation index reached 57.8%. That's also up 0.3% from June.
This has been Business Review, your daily source for the most critical financial stories. Tune in next time for the latest financial news impacting the world economy.